Aaron Hernandez was one of the NFL's brightest stars. With a newly signed $40 million contract, his future looked limitless.
Not only did it change my future from them paying me, but it just changed me as a person.
But when a member of Hernandez's inner circle was brutally murdered, the football star became a prime suspect. And the ensuing investigation would reveal a troubling dark side.
What say you, Madam Foreperson?
Guilty of murder in the first degree.
What drove a star athlete with the world at his feet to commit cold-blooded murder, take his own life, and become notorious? June 17th, 2013, on a warm summer evening in North Attleboro, Massachusetts, a sleepy New England town 38 miles south of Boston, a jogger running through an industrial park made a grisly discovery. The bullet-ridden body of an unidentified man. Police later ID the victim as Odin Lloyd, a semi-pro football player.
The body had multiple gunshot wounds to the chest and to the back. It was later determined that the first shot was in the back.
At the time, there were no witnesses to the murder, but homicide detectives found a crime scene littered with clues. Sprinkled on the ground were shell casings from a Glock 45. They also discovered a half-smoked marijuana cigarette that was sent to the lab for DNA testing. But the biggest clue was found in Odin Lloyd's pocket, a set of car keys. When police processed the evidence, they soon made a shocking discovery. The keys in Odin Lloyd's pocket were from an SUV that had been rented by NFL superstar Aaron Hernandez. Hernandez's home was less than a mile from the crime scene. Police arrived in search of the SUV but found nothing. Officers then questioned Hernandez about the murder.
Hernandez admitted to renting the black SUV for Lloyd. However, he did not let police search the vehicle or his home. And in fact, at that point, he said he would not answer any other questions, and he invoked his right to an attorney. He demanded that the police leave his property.
At the time, police had no choice but to exit the premises.
Fortunately for all of us, police can't simply enter someone's home to search it on their whim or based upon simply their suspicion. They have to get a judge to sign a search warrant. And in order to have a judge sign a search warrant, the police have to demonstrate probable cause.
It's day 3 here in North Attleboro, outside the home of Aaron Hernandez, the star tight end for the New England Patriots.
Police returned to the Hernandez residence, this time with a search warrant. When they entered the home, they made some troubling discoveries.
Evidence surfaced that Hernandez had intentionally destroyed his home security system. Further suspicion was raised when a cell phone belonging to Hernandez was turned over to the police in pieces. Even though the initial probable cause wasn't there to arrest Aaron for this particular murder, the police investigators knew they had their likely suspect in their focus.
The surveillance system hard drive had been destroyed, but investigators were still able to recover footage from the night of the murder. What they saw only raised their suspicions.
At 1:12 a.m., surveillance video shows that 3 individuals got into a silver Nissan Altima and left Hernandez's residence. Those 3 individuals were identified as Carlos Ortiz, Ernest Wallace, and Aaron Hernandez. At 2:32 a.m., cell towers tracked their movements to Odin Lloyd's house. A surveillance camera shows Lloyd entering the same silver Nissan.
Another security camera captured the Nissan pulling into the park where Lloyd's body would be discovered. 4 minutes later, the Altima returns to the Hernandez residence. Wallace, Ortiz, and Hernandez get out. Inside, video showed Hernandez with a gun but could not definitely conclude it was the murder weapon. After reviewing the video, police picked up Carlos Ortiz for questioning. Under interrogation, Ortiz quickly wilts and implicates Wallace and Hernandez in the murder.
Detectives were able to collect additional surveillance footage. This surveillance footage was taken a couple days after the murder, but it was from Hernandez's home, and it showed his girlfriend leaving the home with a large trash bag. Now, the trash bag itself was never located, and the contents were never discovered, but police believe that is how Hernandez disposed of the murder weapon.
Police searched the residence with dogs for days. They used divers to search a nearby lake and canvassed throughout nearby woods, but did not find the murder weapon. In spite of that, Police felt they had enough evidence.
9 days after the body of Odin Lloyd was found, Aaron was arrested at his home for first-degree murder. 1 count of carrying a firearm without a license, 2 counts of possessing a large-capacity firearm, and 2 counts of possessing a firearm without a firearm identification card.
This is now Aaron Hernandez's new reality, the medium security facility here behind me, where he woke up in a jail cell this morning all by himself.
That Hernandez could be a suspect in a brutal murder seemed unfathomable. Just a year earlier, he'd signed a $40 million contract to play for the Super Bowl champion New England Patriots. It was one of the most lucrative contracts in NFL history. Aaron's personal life had also seemed to fall into place. He had gotten engaged to his beautiful girlfriend, a 24-year-old woman named Shania Jenkins. The couple had recently celebrated the birth of a baby girl. It was the type of life that Aaron's parents, Terry and Dennis Hernandez, probably never even dreamed of for their son. A school secretary, Terry Hernandez would have a strained and distant relationship with Aaron throughout his life. In his final days, he would tell her that he felt she never really knew him. Aaron was closest to his father, Dennis, a former athlete who had earned a football scholarship to the University of Connecticut.
Dennis Hernandez is generous and gregarious. He seemingly touched everyone he met.
Although Dennis was kind and giving to strangers, at home it was a different story. A local legend around the neighborhood, Dennis was a perfectionist who expected his 2 sons to excel on and off the football field. When the boys failed to live up to his exacting standards, Dennis routinely beat them. The beatings were so severe that on one occasion Aaron's brother, Jonathan, threatened to call the police, but no call was ever made. Despite the harsh discipline, Aaron idolized his father.
His father was a role model for him. He used to tell him, if it is to be, it is up to me, which basically means you can get anything you want in the world if you try.
Aaron excelled on the football field at Bristol Central High School. Possessing both size and speed, rare for a tight end, he dominated opponents.
Aaron was a superstar since he was in middle school. He excelled in just about every sport that he was in, whether it was the basketball court, the football field.
But in 2006, during a game against Maloney High School of Meriden, Aaron was knocked down by a vicious blindside hit to the head. Aaron laid motionless on the field. His coach was so concerned he called for an ambulance. At the time Aaron suffered the savage hit, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, a brain condition associated with repeated blows to the head, had not begun to make headlines. Little was known about the disease, but some experts now believe CTE can begin as early as high school.
You see it more in professionals. But what I will tell you is that there are persons who have got the symptoms of CTE after only playing in high school.
When Aaron was just 16 years old, the family experienced a tragedy.
Dennis Hernandez died at the age of 49 of complications from a routine hernia surgery.
Aaron was devastated.
Any 16-year-old boy that is close to his father and his father died, it has a major impact on everybody. And it certainly did on Aaron. He said, I was with him more than my friends. When that happened, who do I talk to? Who do I hang out with? It was tough.
Terry Hernandez would later tell the Boston Globe that her husband's death caused her son to become a different person overnight, turning him into an angry, raging, rebelling teenager.
But it's pretty clear from what his mother told everyone that as soon as that death occurred, Aaron became a different kid. He wasn't dealing well within the household or outside. The seeds of his problems had definitely been planted.
Without his father's guidance, Aaron turned to drugs and fell in with 2 petty criminals, Ernest Wallace and Carlos Ortiz. But despite his newfound habits and friends, Aaron continued to excel on the football field, and soon colleges took notice. The University of Florida was the preeminent college football program in the country, having just won their 2nd national championship. Coach Urban Meyer was recruiting the best of the best, and Aaron Hernandez was at the top of his list. Fielding a winning football team didn't require players who were role models.
And Urban Meyer, the head coach, on the field, he was terrific. I mean, no matter where he went, Bowling Green, he was successful. Utah, he was a success. We know at Ohio State, after he left Florida, he was a success. But at Florida, things were kind of flimsy. One of the lowest graduation rates in the country, and at least 25 guys either were arrested or had other type of problems off the field.
At the time, some Florida football players had a reputation for lawlessness, from drugs and alcohol and even domestic violence. talented football players typically weren't held accountable for their actions.
Urban Meyer was known for nurturing his players, but also known for having some players who had a tendency to misbehave. And I think probably Aaron Hernandez is about as classic example as you're going to get.
Just 4 months after arriving on campus, Hernandez was involved in a violent altercation.
On April 28, 2007, as a 17-year-old freshman, Aaron drank 2 alcoholic drinks at a restaurant and refused to pay the bill.
Teammate Tim Tebow was with Hernandez at the time and offered to pay for the drinks, but the Heisman-winning quarterback and Hernandez were escorted out of the bar before the bill could be closed.
As the employee, Michael Taphorn, walked away, Aaron punched him on the side of the head and ruptured his eardrum.
When police arrived at the bar, Aaron had already fled the scene, leaving Tebow to clean up the mess.
Tebow informed the police that he had tried to persuade Aaron to settle the matter peacefully. 2 hours later, law enforcement tracked down Aaron. Police department recommended that Aaron should be charged with felony battery. The incident was settled out of court with a deferred prosecution agreement.
The agreement allowed Hernandez to avoid an assault conviction, and the police did not pursue the underage drinking charge.
Athletes have a privileged status, and certainly Aaron Hernandez had a privileged status. If he got in trouble, people helped him out. People got lawyers for him and explained it all away and so on. And in his life experience, he got away with basically everything.
When these entitlement situations present themselves, especially to someone at a young age, it becomes sort of the protocol by which they live the rest of their life. They expect to be let go from these types of situations, be them physical, mental, psychological, financial, whatever.
Aaron got away with some things early in his life, and this laid the groundwork for what would happen later on as he became an adult.
Coaches will do whatever they can to keep these guys from being outstanding citizens, not breaking the law, and keeping them eligible scholastically. Guys like Aaron Hernandez. The coaching staff was so concerned that they took him home with them to be with their families, fishing trips, dinners, things like that.
While he was on campus, coaches were able to keep Aaron in line, but on trips home, he was out of their reach. Coaches worried that in Connecticut, Aaron was negatively influenced by his old friends. Guys like his old pals from his hometown neighborhood, Ernest Wallace and Carlos Ortiz.
After a break, when he went to visit his family, Urban Meyer, the coach of Florida, noticed that Aaron was a little different. And Urban Meyer arranged for some of the other players to spend some more time with him, like the Pouncey brothers, Marquise and Mike, and even Tim Tebow. And what they did was they read Bible passages to Aaron Hernandez.
Star quarterback and team captain Tim Tebow was open about the positive role religion played in his life, often inscribing John 3:16 for the Bible verse in his eye black on game day. He tried to share that religious influence with Aaron. While the restaurant incident was brushed off and teammates worked to help him, soon Hernandez's off-field issues would escalate beyond anyone's control. Several years away from the notorious killer that Aaron Hernandez would come to be known as, Hernandez arrived at the University of Florida, a powerhouse college football program, in 2007. Hernandez's meteoric rise in the NFL and his equally fast downfall would result in a slew of magazine articles, TV documentaries, and even a book by best-selling author James Patterson. One of the incidents Patterson would include in his book occurred in Gainesville, Florida in September of 2007 after 3 men left a local night spot.
On the night of September 30th, 2007, 5 gunshots were fired into a car containing Randall Kaysen, Justin Glass, and Corey Smith while they waited at a Gainesville stoplight after having left a nightclub.
Glass was shot in his right arm while Smith was struck in the back of the head. Both men survived.
A passenger sitting in the back seat who was uninjured told police that the shooter was a Hawaiian or Hispanic male with a large build weighing about 230 pounds and had many tattoos.
Hernandez fit the description.
Police learned that the victims had earlier had an altercation inside the club with a group of football players, including Aaron Hernandez. The police report stated that former Gator Reggie Nelson and current Gators, the Pouncey brothers, and Aaron Hernandez were together when an altercation between them and the victim broke out.
Police initially believed the confrontation led to the shooting and suspected Hernandez might be the gunman. Then the investigation hit a snag.
The key witness recanted his identification of Hernandez, while multiple other witnesses came forward to describe the shooter as an African-American man who bore little resemblance to Hernandez. Police dropped Hernandez as a possible suspect.
If it was the case that Hernandez was cleared in the shooting, it was also true that trouble never seemed to be very far away from him, and the beginning of his sophomore season was no different. Hernandez missed the first game of the season. Coach Urban Meyer gave no reason for Hernandez's absence, but rumor had it that it was due to a failed drug test. Once Hernandez was back in the lineup, the University of Florida went on to have one of its best seasons ever, beating Oklahoma in the BCS National Championship game. By his junior year, Hernandez was an unstoppable force on the field.
I'm saying we're doing a decent job knowing that we're missing the Pounceys. I think when the Pounceys come back and B. James comes back, we'll have a lot more threats.
Aaron Hernandez was a great player. I mean, he won the John Mackey Award for the nation's best tight end.
Hernandez had only played 3 years of college football, but eager to step onto a bigger stage, he declared for the 2010 NFL Draft.
Owners treat draft choices like gold. A draft choice is an investment. Are you going to invest a lot of money into somebody who might not be able to play on Sunday because they're breaking the law?
Given his brushes with the law and rumors of failed drug tests, Hernandez was considered a risky selection.
But he had such athletic ability. When you see somebody like him, you want him on your team and you convince yourself, I can work with him. We can counsel him, we can give him a role model, and we can control it.
On draft day, 3 rounds passed and 112 players were selected, but no team called Hernandez's name.
He was kind of punished in the draft, though, because normally, if you didn't have any off-the-field problems, he would have been a guaranteed first-round pick.
Finally, in the 4th round, the New England Patriots selected him with the 113th pick.
Clearly, the order in which he finally made that draft had been affected by the reputation he already had.
Despite the disappointment, Hernandez told reporters that it was a dream come true.
Not only did it change my future from them paying me, but it just changed me as a person.
Aaron signs a 4-year deal with a $200,000 signing bonus. He would get a $750,000 contract, which was good, provided that he did everything the right way.
Hernandez's contract was good money for a young man from humble beginnings, but compared to the other contracts handed out in the NFL, it was a modest deal. The Patriots were betting on Hernandez, but they were hedging their bet. When the season began, it looked like the gamble would pay off.
He started the 2010 season as the youngest player on any active roster in the NFL. In Week 2, against the Jets, he caught 6 passes for 101 yards, making him the youngest player since 1960 to have 100 yards receiving in a single game.
Hernandez lit up the league to the delight of fans. His personal troubles appeared a thing of the past, but then his on-field performance had never been the issue. In 2012, Hernandez and the Patriots made it all the way to the Super Bowl. While the Patriots lost, Hernandez shined in the game and seemed to be living a charmed life. He was at the top of his profession, had money for the first time in his life, and he and his live-in girlfriend Shania Jenkins were expecting a child. But, as often the case with Hernandez, things were more complicated than they appeared.
While the externals of Aaron Hernandez's life seemed to be going quite smoothly, there were obviously some internal issues that were fomenting throughout that carried over into his personal life.
With the season over, Aaron was back in Connecticut, hanging out with the wrong crowd. A friend, Alexander Bradley, was a local drug dealer and was supplying Hernandez with marijuana, an offense that, if discovered, could cost Hernandez his NFL career. But Hernandez had a history of getting away with questionable friends and questionable behavior.
When individuals commit a crime, no matter what it is, murder, to steal, to burglarize, or whatever it is, those individuals think that this is a great idea, that they're never going to get caught. And I think that's a component in Hernandez's mind as well. I don't think he thought he would ever get caught or held responsible for anything. He always was able to work his way out of it.
Together, Hernandez and Bradley frequented nightclubs in Boston, Providence, and West Hartford. Hernandez told Bradley he wanted a gun for protection. That summer, Bradley supplied him with a silver revolver. Aaron was sinking into a dark world.
You have to ask the question, why is Hernandez with the guns? There's a disconnect here. I mean, what is Aaron trying to do? He wants to be a gangster, or does he want to be an NFL football player? I mean, he's living in both worlds, and they're not going to mix.
On July 15, 2012, Bradley had a few drinks and smoked marijuana before heading to the Cure nightclub in Boston's Theater District. Hernandez took his .38 along. At the club, they encountered a 29-year-old Daniel D'Abreu and 28-year-old Safiro Furtado. As D'Abreu made his way through the dance floor, he bumped into Hernandez, spilling his drink on the tight end shirt. Hernandez was furious.
Bradley attempts to calm the situation down by removing Hernandez from the nightclub, in fact, trying to take him to another nightclub. And Hernandez cooperated, however, he was still upset. He didn't let the frustration and the anger go. And in fact, he thought those same strangers at the bar were continuing to follow them, and that just wasn't the case.
At closing time, D'Abreu and Furtado left the club. Just after 2 a.m., they drove a silver BMW out of a nearby parking garage. Moments later, at a stoplight, another car pulled up next to them. In an instant, a hail of bullets cut through the night air, killing D'Abreu and Furtado.
A silver SUV fled the scene after the shooting.
With Bradley the only witness to the altercation in the club, Hernandez was never a suspect.
Boston police searched for the missing silver SUV, but with no luck. Without this key piece of evidence, police were unable to identify any suspects.
Was Aaron Hernandez the triggerman in the silver SUV? Had his volcanic rage finally driven him to commit murder? During a night of wild partying at Boston nightclub, NFL star Aaron Hernandez went into a rage after he believed two men disrespected him. Later that evening, as the men were driving away from the nightclub, they were gunned down at an intersection. A silver SUV was seen fleeing the scene, but police were unable to locate the vehicle. When police conducted a ballistics analysis on the bullet shells found at the crime scene, the results showed they came from a .38 Smith & Wesson. The same caliber gun Alexander Bradley gave to Hernandez. But with no witnesses to the murders stepping forward, police had no reason to suspect Hernandez. But for all the red flags off the field, Hernandez appeared to be keeping his personal and professional lives from colliding. And by August 2012, he had a lucrative new contract with the Patriots.
In 2012, Aaron signed a new contract, 5 years, $40 million, with a huge signing bonus. In fact, his signing bonus was one of the biggest in NFL history.
Hernandez could afford to live in style.
In October 2012, Aaron Hernandez got engaged to his longtime girlfriend, and a month later, the two had a daughter. Hernandez and his fiancée moved into a $1.3 million home in North Attleboro, Massachusetts.
The lavish spending didn't end there.
For Shanna's birthday in 2012, Aaron rented out a skybox during one of his games. The guest list was comprised of close family members and friends and their dates. Here, Aaron met Odin Lloyd, who was dating Shanna's sister.
Hernandez and Lloyd had a lot in common. They dated sisters, played football, and loved partying and smoking marijuana.
Lloyd and Aaron hit it off and began hanging out frequently. The two would live a lavish lifestyle together. Aaron would take him to clubs. The two bonded over sports and partying.
Soon, Hernandez took his drug use to another level. He began smoking marijuana laced with PCP, a psychedelic stimulant that Hernandez quickly began abusing.
You're using phencyclidine, PCP, and you have paranoid tinge to thinking. You think everybody's out to get you. Everybody is going to hurt you, and you see yourself as vulnerable.
Hernandez's behavior became erratic. He installed a security system in his house. He bought more guns. His temper flared.
He felt he was being disrespected all the time. If somebody bumped into him at a bar, he took this as a major sign of disrespect. I mean, come on. This goes to some level of enormous arrogance. You expect people to just treat you like a king. Aaron is a very intimidating person. He's huge. He looks intimidating. He behaves in an intimidating way. The combination of history of violence, arrogance, guns, and drug abuse ends poorly in almost every case.
Still, while his personal life deteriorated, his professional life flourished. In 2012, Hernandez emerged as a star tight end for the Patriots, helping the team reach the AFC Championship game. Hernandez's penchant for drinking and late-night partying continued to be a volatile mix. In February 2013, Hernandez invited drug dealer Alexander Bradley to a Super Bowl party in Florida. Then, after a night of partying at a Miami strip club called Tootsie's, Hernandez got into an argument with Bradley and shot him in the face. The bullet went through the bridge of Bradley's nose and blew out his right eye. Bradley was left for dead, but he survived. And although Bradley stayed mum, detectives were suspicious of Hernandez.
Bradley's silence comes as no surprise, as we have seen this time and time again from Aaron's past victims. It's clear that Aaron instills fear in his victims for what he might do if they were ever to come clean on who their assailant was. So it doesn't really surprise me at all that nobody said anything.
Seasoned investigators don't believe in coincidences. If the same person's in the same sort of a nightclub and people get murdered or shot up in a drive-by type situation, there's a very strong possibility that person may be connected to these shootings. It may not be enough to arrest them right there, but he would certainly go to the top of the suspect list.
Although Bradley wasn't talking to the police, he was still talking to Hernandez. A month after the shooting, he angrily texted the NFL star demanding compensation. But a brazen Hernandez acted like the shooting had never happened and ignored Bradley's threats. "You have no clue," Hernandez responded. But many say it was Hernandez who was clueless about the dangerous direction his life was taking.
I know that there's a need to look at a case like Aaron Hernandez and on one hand say, here's somebody who was signed for $40 million and he throws it away over what? That somebody disrespected him? It seems ridiculous. But in this case, it's much more complicated. There's too much violence, there's too much guns, there's too much drug abuse. They're not gonna mix.
But Hernandez had no intention of toning down his life, and after shooting and abandoning his drug-dealing friend Bradley, he increasingly began hanging out with semi-pro football player Odin Lloyd, who was still dating his girlfriend's sister.
Lloyd was a part of Aaron's inner circle. For Lloyd, Aaron's wealth was a way for him to vicariously live out his NFL dreams.
But soon, Aaron's friendship with Odin Lloyd appeared to sour. On June 14, 2013, Aaron and Odin argued at a nightclub in Boston. 3 days later, Odin Lloyd was found shot to death less than a mile from Hernandez's house. Very early on, detectives found a mountain of evidence linking Hernandez to the crime. A video showed that Hernandez had hooked back up with his old hometown criminal buddies Carlos Ortiz and Ernest Wallace. The three of them are seen driving into the industrial park where Lloyd's body was found. A set of car keys belonging to Hernandez were found in Lloyd's pocket. 9 days after the murder, police moved in.
Aaron was arrested at his home for first-degree murder. Police also arrested Carlos Ortiz and Ernest Wallace as accessories to murder.
News of Hernandez's arrest on murder charges sent shockwaves throughout the NFL. The New England Patriots reacted swiftly.
I and other members of the organization were shocked and disappointed.
Hernandez's arrest and termination meant that he had to forfeit roughly half of the $40 million contract he had signed just the year before.
Needless to say, this was a media circus. I mean, let's face it, this guy was a household name. He was a NFL player. He'd been in a Super Bowl.
He was on a pedestal of his own making as well as that of the public's. However, once the pieces of that pedestal started being chipped away, the public then began looking at him as someone different, as a killer.
As detectives methodically built their case against Hernandez, all the evidence continued to point to him as the killer. Police also found a half-smoked marijuana cigarette near Lloyd's body. The marijuana joint had been sent to labs for testing. Results indicated the DNA found on it belonged to Aaron Hernandez, putting him at the scene of the crime. Even without a murder weapon, prosecutors believed they had enough to build a circumstantial case and convict Hernandez of murder.
Direct evidence is if you look outside and you see it raining. Circumstantial evidence is someone comes in with a wet umbrella, they've got water on their clothes, but you don't actually see it raining. But you can reasonably conclude that it's raining outside.
But the criminal case was only the beginning of Hernandez's problems. With his violent temper and hair-trigger finger, the NFL tight end had made plenty of enemies. And now one of those enemies was out to settle the score. NFL star tight end Aaron Hernandez lived a seemingly charmed life. Athletically gifted, the working-class kid from Bristol, Connecticut earned a scholarship to the University of Florida and won a national championship with the Gators. Shady friends and rumors of marijuana use and gunplay off the field were no match for his talent. Ignoring the warning flags, the New England Patriots selected him in the 4th round of the 2010 draft. Hernandez helped lead his team to the Super Bowl in only his 2nd season. With his athletic feats of excellence, the tight end made a name for himself on the field, but his ultra-violent behavior off the field added an adjective to that name. With his volcanic rage and hair-trigger finger, Aaron Hernandez had become notorious. In February of 2013, Aaron Hernandez had shot his drug dealer Alexander Bradley through the eye. Bradley had threatened to sue if the NFL star didn't pay up. With Hernandez behind bars, Bradley saw an opportunity to make good on his threat.
After Aaron's arrest, Bradley would file a civil suit claiming that Aaron was the one who shot him because Aaron felt disrespected after an argument over a missing cell phone. Bradley said that after Aaron's arrest for the Lloyd murder, he felt safe enough to come forward.
Hernandez was now facing 2 separate charges, one civil and one criminal murder charge. Despite the seriousness of the allegations, Hernandez's attorney pleaded with the judge to allow his client to post bail.
Mr. Hernandez is charged with a very serious crime, but that shouldn't be enough to hold him without bail.
The Commonwealth has presented a case that's circumstantial, to be sure, but very, very strong.
The judge's ruling would mean Hernandez would have to remain in prison until his trial. Hernandez's imprisonment resulted in frequent jailhouse conversations with his mother, allowing the two of them to repair their strained relationship. The two bonded over conversation about his fiancée.
I'll tell you what, I don't care what anybody says. I give that girl the utmost respect.
Yeah, she's a good girl. She still holds me down, too.
Aaron, I don't care. I'll defend her to anybody. Nobody can say nothing to me about that girl. I don't care.
She loves me, that's one thing. It's crazy. I don't
She does.
understand it, but she does.
In early June of 2013, police began investigating Hernandez for the murders of Daniel D'Abreu and Safiro Furtado, the 2 men who got into an altercation with Hernandez inside a Boston nightclub and were later shot inside their car while stopped at a traffic light. Later that month, they would find a key piece of evidence.
Police found the silver SUV they had been looking for in connection with the Boston double murder.
And they found it in Aaron's uncle's garage in Bristol, Connecticut.
With this discovery, they were able to directly link the double homicide to Aaron. Aaron was indicted for the murders in Boston.
But that trial was still to come. For now, Hernandez and his lawyers focused on the Odin Lloyd murder charge. 19 months after Hernandez was charged, his trial began.
The trial was set for January 29, 2015, just days before his former team was set to play in the Super Bowl.
The trial took place at the Bristol County Superior Courthouse in Fall River, Connecticut. Although Terry Hernandez's relationship with her son had become strained after her husband's death, she was there for Aaron as the trial began. From the outset, prosecutors used witness and security video to establish a timeline of events the night of the murder. Early in the evening, the bar manager of the Rhode Island restaurant where Hernandez and friends ran up a hefty bar tab testified that she saw Hernandez and friends smoking weed on the street corner.
Mr. Hernandez and the other gentlemen were smoking on the corner of the street.
Okay. When you say they were smoking, what were they smoking?
I believe marijuana, because that's where the smell was coming from.
Later that evening, 90 minutes before the murder, security video showed an apparently high Hernandez strutting and dancing in a gas station parking lot. More importantly, cameras inside the gas station store show Hernandez buying blue bubble gum, the same color gum found on a shell casing at the murder scene. When police followed the clues to Hernandez's doorstep, they said he didn't answer the doorbell. And when he finally did, he was irritable and uncooperative and even slammed the doors on the detectives.
He became agitated, upset, and then he turned away from us.
Police eventually returned with a warrant and arrested Hernandez peacefully. When Hernandez's fiancée took the stand, she was protective of her boyfriend, but nonetheless revealed damaging details.
It was a cardboard box.
Okay. And did he indicate to you what was inside the box?
No.
Did he say why he wanted you to do this?
I believe he said it was important. I'm not too sure.
If people were reminded of the O.J. Simpson story, they weren't wrong in being reminded about this. This had some similar kinds of feeling in that we had a big football star and we had a body.
It was a gossipy story, and people were interested because that's the way people are these days. They love celebrities, and they even love celebrity crime more.
Prosecutors had a mountain of evidence, but the defense contended that Hernandez wasn't responsible, that police simply targeted him from the start. They pressed prosecutors to explain what possible motive Hernandez had to kill Lloyd.
Well, with respect to the motive for Aaron to kill Lloyd, the prosecutors said that Lloyd knew the truth behind some other offenses that Aaron committed, including the 2012 double homicide, and prosecutors believed that Lloyd said something recently that destroyed his trust with Aaron.
Many theories about Hernandez's motive existed, but ultimately the evidence against him was overwhelming. They had tapes, they had guns, they had DNA. They had almost everything except the murder weapon, a detail the defense tried to take full advantage of.
Essentially, what the defense attorneys were telling the jury was that Aaron Hernandez was in the wrong place at the wrong time, witnessed something he wasn't prepared to handle, and then just didn't know what to do.
To prevent their client from being shredded on the witness stand by prosecutors, Hernandez's lawyers counseled him against taking the stand. The jury deliberated for 7 days before returning a verdict.
What say you, Madam Foreperson? Is the defendant not guilty, guilty of murder in the first degree, or guilty of murder in the second degree?
Guilty of murder in the first degree.
On April 15, 2015, Aaron was found guilty of murder in the first degree and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Additionally, he was found guilty of 5 firearm-related charges. Immediately following the conviction, Aaron was temporarily transferred to a maximum security intake facility to begin serving his sentence. Oddly enough, the facility was located 1.5 miles from the stadium where he used to play football.
While Hernandez's murder trial had ended, his days in court were far from over. It was a shocking fall from grace. A gifted athlete, Aaron Hernandez, had experienced success at every level of football, even helping the New England Patriots get the 2012 Super Bowl. Then, the dark life he'd been living outside the public eye caught up with him. On April 15, 2015, Aaron Hernandez was found guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Odin Lloyd, his one-time friend.
What say you, Madam Foreperson?
Guilty of murder in the first degree.
He immediately began serving a mandatory life sentence. But behind bars, Hernandez's legal troubles continued. His former friend, Alexander Bradley, had sued him in civil court, accusing Hernandez of shooting him.
Bradley's civil lawsuit resulted in a settlement.
But Hernandez was still facing murder charges in the slayings of D'Abreu and Safiro Furtado. In Bristol, Connecticut, police found a silver SUV that matched the vehicle witnesses saw speeding away from the murder scene. It was a vehicle police were able to link directly to Hernandez. On March 2, 2017, Hernandez once again found himself back in court. But this time, the case against him fell apart.
While the prosecutors seemed to have all the evidence that they needed, the case had been far too removed and they had lost key testimonies from before. This left them counting on the testimony of a known drug dealer.
The state's star witness was Hernandez's old friend, Alexander Bradley, who claimed to be partying with the football star the night D'Abreu and Furtado were shot.
After I got through that light, as I was approaching the car, he removed the firearm from the glove box.
He being who?
Mr. Hernandez.
What did you think was going to happen, Mr. Bradley?
I thought at the very most, he might try to intimidate him or, maybe say something or address the issue that happened previously in the club.
Bradley under oath testified that Hernandez shot D'Abreu and Furtado. But defense counsel successfully was able to place doubt in the minds of the jury as to Bradley's credibility.
Bradley's character an open question, defense attorneys argued that it was the drug dealer who actually shot Abreu and Furtado.
Say you, Madam Foreperson, on indictment 2014-10417, offense 003, charging armed assault with intent to murder. Victim Aquilino Freire. You find the defendant not guilty or guilty of this offense as charged?
Not guilty.
Hernandez was found not guilty of all charges except one count of illegal possession of a handgun.
So this was a big deal, but nobody knew, of course, that it had a very surprise twist ending.
Hernandez had won a victory, but his sense of triumph quickly dissipated. He was still condemned to living the rest of his life behind bars.
5 days after the acquittal, on April 19, 2017 at 3:05 a.m., correctional officers found Aaron hanging by his bedsheets from his window in his cell at the correctional center. He was transported to UMass Memorial, where he was pronounced dead at 4:07 a.m.
Inside Aaron's cell were cryptic clues about his thoughts and motives.
And there were drawings in blood on the walls showing an unfinished pyramid and the all-seeing eye of God with the word Illuminati written in capital letters underneath.
Investigators found 3 handwritten notes next to a Bible which was open to John 3:16, and John 3:16 was written on his forehead in ink.
It was the same Bible verse Hernandez learned about from teammate Tim Tebow.
John 3:16 reads, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. And I think that biblical passage speaks for itself with respect to what was going on in Aaron's mind just before he killed himself.
Following his suicide, Aaron Hernandez accomplished something that had eluded him in life.
Aaron's lawyers filed a motion to vacate his murder conviction. Their request was based on a law that states if the defendant has died before they had the opportunity to exhaust all of their legal appeals, then their conviction cannot stand. The request was granted. So technically, Aaron died an innocent man.
The tragic story of Aaron Hernandez left many wondering what had gone wrong.
When the average person looks at Aaron Hernandez, they say, my God, a $40 million contract. What are you doing in bars, bumping into people with guns and all of this nonsense? Why don't you just play football and live the life of a multimillionaire?
After his death, Hernandez's family searched for answers for his violent behavior. They requested an autopsy be performed on his brain. The examination revealed that Hernandez had advanced chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE.
With that autopsy, we found out he had something called CTE, and his brain was like the brain found in players in their 60s.
Do I think that had some connection to his violence? I do, because if we know anything about brain damage, we know that it weakens inhibitory controls, and an individual without the brain damage may have been better able to control themselves.
CTE has become a major issue in professional football. Players with CTE have committed violent crimes, and some have killed themselves.
This was considered one of the most serious cases they'd seen of someone that young, and I think that becomes a really important element of this story. The question really becomes, was Aaron Hernandez a criminal, or was by this time he suffering some real pathological things that he didn't have control over?
There was a toxic mix to Aaron Hernandez's life, certainly in the last few years of it. He was doing drugs. He may have been paranoid. He may have been hit in the head a few more times than he should have while playing football. He had access to weapons. His world was coming and crashing down on him.
I think what was unique to Aaron Hernandez was here was someone who worked really hard for a career that people could only dream of. The wealth that he had, the family that he was starting, it wouldn't be someone that you would associate with committing such heinous crimes.
In the end, Hernandez's legacy of brilliance on the field will forever be coupled with his troubled life off the field.
I think he becomes one of these metaphors for celebrity in American culture, sports in American culture, the exploitation of people, including players.
They watched him rise to the pinnacle of NFL stardom. They also watched him fall to the depths of being a convicted murderer. There's not a young guy out there that probably, if they couldn't trade places with him, wouldn't want to be a starting tight end in the NFL for the New England Patriots of all teams. He basically had it all, but that just wasn't enough for him.